Hello and welcome to Changemakers Unplugged, amplifying voices, inspiring action. A fresh from the oven podcast by IP Global, one of the largest South-based social sector organization with over 25 years of experience in international development across Africa, Asia and Europe. I'm your host Shilpi and you're listening to Changemakers Unplugged, a special series commemorating IP Global's 25th anniversary, where we bring you a conversation that delves deep into the inspiring journeys of remarkable individuals who, like us, are committed to transforming lives. This month, we spotlight a visionary whose pioneering work and forward-thinking approach continues to motivate many. We speak to Mr. Vinod Zutshi, former Secretary, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, an IAS officer of 1982 batch from Rajasthan, Cadre. Mr. Zutshi comes with 35 plus years of leadership experience in public policy and administration, with long experience in the fields of tourism, election, education, and management. I spoke to our guest about his transformative work across various spheres, his experiences, and the vision he holds for India's development. We also explored insights on how fostering sustainable tourism practices can drive socio-economic growth. His journey offers valuable lessons for aspiring changemakers, policymakers, young scholars alike. All right. Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Zutshi, for being with us on Changemakers Unplugged.
Thank you.
To begin with, Mr. Zutshi, we'd love to hear about your early days, your childhood, your life as a student, and your inspiration behind a career in the administrative services.
So, yes, Shilpi, I was a very, good student, in academics. And if you talk of school days, I knew I was pretty bright because of the fact that I used to stand first in the class in the entire school phase that I had. Then I did my graduation, and there also I was a gold medalist in the university. Subsequently, I joined Masters of Business Administration in Delhi with two minds. Number one, that I should, with an eye on the administrative services, I thought that it is better to stand on your own feet first, and for that you need to be employed. So I chose to do MBA, which was also pretty close to the administrative, area. And I came to Faculty of Management Studies, Delhi University, did MBA from 76 to 78. And immediately after that, I took up a job with the intention that I should have enough time to prepare for the civil services. And right from day one, I started working on. Now, if you ask me why I was passionate about the administrative services, firstly, because, when you are very bright in academics, you tend to get such feelers from people around you, whether they are friends, whether they are relatives. And then you also assess yourself. When you grow up, you come to college, you compete in the the MBA entrance examination, and you see all people, coming from all over the country, and you still get qualified for the entrance exam. And then subsequently you apply for a job and you get a job also. So you start feeling that, yes, you are the material who can make a try, and the passion is on one side. The other is that the confidence that you may also get in was certainly there because of good academics. And subsequently, I tried the civil services, and fortunately, I could qualify in 1982. Now, since then, 35 years of journey, as you have already mentioned, has been very interesting, I would say, in the sense that I couldn't have wished for any better career, because the kinds of challenges that you have, the kinds of opportunities that you have in civil services is unparalleled. You get such a rich exposure. My selection of career was as per my own requirement, as per my satisfaction.
So thank you. I think that's lovely. You just got me to relive the great Indian dream of joining the Indian Administrative Services. So, yes, let's rewind to August 2015. I think it was a very pivotal month in your career when you transitioned from serving as the Deputy Election Commissioner to eventually, taking charge as the Secretary of Ministry of Tourism. So, how did your experience at the Election Commission really shape your approach in the Ministry of Tourism?
Yes, you have a point. In fact, see, I enjoyed my almost 6 years of stint in Election Commission so much that as I was telling about the exposure, this was one assignment where my exposure was maximum. And how? Because when you conduct elections, I'm talking of general elections of 2014, for example. Having general elections in India is called as the biggest show on earth. So you involve so many departments and ministries. You involve state governments. Let me also tell you, we deal with, in the Election Commission, during elections, IS, IPS and IRS, Indian Revenue Service officers, observers. And thousands of them, they are involved as observers all over the country. Now, the kind of interaction you have with these, senior officers, you deal with the DMs and SPs, in the various states. I must have conducted, in those 5 years, every state has one election. So one has an exposure. When we had elections, we used to go to the states. For example, Gujarat. I was in charge of Gujarat, Bihar. So we would stay there for almost a month. Not exactly stay forever for the whole time, but come back again, go again, because for preparations and all. So you get exposed to the entire culture of that place. So that is one. So one knew about the government working so well. And ultimately, since we have already worked in the state governments in different capacities, at different levels. But yes, becoming Secretary to Government of India is something which I think when we are young IS officers, when we join the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy, we all used to talk on the first day, and I wish, and we had the director of the LBSNA at that time. He gave an inaugural lecture, and he always, he would motivate us, today you are a probationer, one day probationer, and I want to see you becoming Secretary to Government of India, Now, that kind of dream you start having right from the word go when you join. And yes, it's a very important day for any IS officer, who ultimately gets the opportunity, I would say, of being at that level, because not just because it is not status oriented. I'm not talking in those terms, but in your department or your ministry, you are at the helm at the civil service level as a civil servant, and you're looking after the entire country. So that satisfaction of being on top, and both in terms of responsibility, in terms of the scope that you can, that you have during those 2-3 years as secretary to serve the nation at the very topmost level. And you are actually capable of doing it, because your policies, your directions, your thoughts, your vision applies down the line to the entire tourism fraternity and all the entire country. So that is important. So you have to be extra careful. And therefore, that is why I enjoyed every day of my tenure as Secretary Tourism. And you get contacts. You tend to build contacts not just within India. I used to represent India in international forums. You have WTO, you have the World Travel Market, you have ITB Berlin, and so many other. In fact, ASEAN India has one forum on tourism itself. So that way you get to know about international success stories also, successful case studies also. And you come back and implement. You see what is happening in the other countries. So it was, of course, an eventful day. You mentioned August 2015.
Yes.
So in the sense that, and the best thing, Shilpi, is that, when you come out of this post, when you finish your tenure, what is the level of satisfaction that you have? That is very important. It is not just the joining which is important. It is the end, when you come out of that particular position, and then you see. And that I can gauge that kind of, my own performance, or you may say whatever I tried to do during those 2 years. in the sense, in terms of the love and affection which I'm getting from the tourism industry even now.
Sure, I think that's a pretty interesting, the entire journey that you've encapsulated and the experiences. And now that we're talking about tourism, diving into tourism, because we are celebrating World Tourism Day, and so let's just explore the concept of tourism as a bridge to peace. So the two school of thoughts basically. Some say that tourism actively fosters peace by encouraging cross-cultural understanding, but there's this other set which sees tourism as benefiting from peaceful conditions. What is your take on
Shilpi,
this?
I think I believe in both sects together at the same time. It is basically tourism gets the benefit whenever peace is there. And the peace induces tourism. So it is both the beneficiary as well as it is a generator. When a soldier crosses the border and enters into another neighboring country, it is termed as war. But when a tourist enters the same country, he is welcomed with flowers and greetings. Such is the power of tourism.
Oh, that's an interesting take. We'll remember this quote. I just wanted to also, now that you mentioned about, of course, very rightly said that, tourism is the harbinger of peace and vice versa. If you could really take one iconic landmark in India on a world tour, to promote peace, which one would it be and why?
Shilpi ji, it's a very difficult question, though. I would certainly mention that my own choice. But India has always been a land considered as a land of peace and non-violence. We know it very well. Whether it is Buddha's teachings, whether it was Gandhian philosophy, which are still very relevant to India. Cultural heritage of India in terms of the how we have glorified the peace all these years, right, from ancient India time. And today also, if you see in terms of the reasons for coming to India, the spiritual peace loving people, that is our biggest strength even today. The natural heritage and cultural heritage. These are two areas even proved by the tourism and travel index, which is thrown by, international organizations, TTCI, they say index. They say that India's biggest strength is natural heritage and cultural heritage. So I will pick up a place where, people look and find the real India. So since you have tied me down to just one place, so I would say that, Sarnath and, Bodh Gaya, which though the non-Buddhists, not too many non-Buddhists, they visit because of Buddhism, People from Southeast Asian nations who are basically primarily follow Buddhism, they do come here for some spiritual reasons. But Buddha's teachings basically as an apostle of peace, that attracts everyone. So I would say that one place where you go and you find peace is Bodh Gaya or Sarnath, where you realize, that, the teachings of Buddha. And that is something, which I think could be an icon, which I have chosen when you talk purely in terms of peace.
What is your take on the role of private sector here? We talk about a lot of public-private partnerships, and there's an increased conversation around this. So, what is your views?
Good, you asked a very relevant question to the points that I just now mentioned. So, I was talking of infrastructure, right? And you talked about public-private partnership. Now, look at our country at this moment. All good roads, whether it is national expressways, whether it is national highways, any person can see there are toll highways, on the tolls on the highways. Now, what are these tolls? These are the signs of public-private partnership. And there is no doubt, and there should not be any, in fact, even government admits that the resources with governments are limited and our needs are too many. That is why the private sector's entry becomes extremely relevant. I'm not talking of just tourism, but in tourism itself, when you talk infrastructure, I told about roads, airports. You see, the latest trend is that the airports, and you see how convenient the airport terminals have become. I won't say that they were not so convenient, but then things are changing. The private sector's exposure is much more. They can spend much more money and get it back also. Government has its own limitations. It doesn't have so much of machinery also. So the kind of investment that they can make into new things, modern things, the procedure in the government is longer. So what ultimately is that there is a deficit both in resources as well as there is a need felt in the process of development of this country, where private sector's entry is more of a necessity today. I would talk about tourism. Tourism is all about private sector. Right from the time when I was Secretary Tourism, Rajasthan government, 15 years ago, rather 20 years ago, and till the time I came as Secretary to Government of India. I have been always saying this, that for generating tourism, we have to seek the help of the private sector, and we are more as a facilitator of tourism and not to create. In fact, today the tourism development corporations bungalows are gradually winding up. They are being withdrawn. So accommodation providing is not the sole objective of the government. So we bring in policies. We create an environment, an enabling environment by which taxes, regulations, these should be tourism friendly, and private sector will come in.
Sure. I just wanted to, building further on that, also do you think there's a perception among people that, when there's a particular service or that is provided, let's say, by the private sector vis-a-vis the government, be it hotels, be it any other kind of infra that you mentioned, is the quality going to be better?
Well, I would not like to make any differentiation in the quality, I tell you, because fortunately, I have spent 35 years in government. And over the last 7.5 years after my superannuation, I'm more associated with private sector people as consultant advisor to many private organizations. I go to government organizations also as a resource person, but my association in their business is with the private sector. I realize that the kind of intellect that we have in government, is no less than the private sector. At times it is even more. That could also be because government, in all, if you take the total workforce, government's workforce is smaller than the private sector. So the quality of manpower in the private sector has not been judged. They've not been trained. When we joined the IAS, Shilpi, we are given 2 years of probation training. We are taken all over. We go for Bharat Darshan. We are shown the entire country. And we don't work for 2 years and just learn. They educate us. The idea is that for the next 35 years, they have to serve the country. Now, I'm just giving you this example, and this has not been done today. It's been happening for ages. That kind of thing, maybe the private sector cannot invest. If you talk of skilling in tourism sector, Shilpi, I've handled the institutes of hotel managements. Today, 95% of the people, the workforce which are trained, the young professionals in tourism, they come out from these government organizations, government educational institutions. Only handful of institutes, they are there, but basically for their own captive consumption. If one hotel chain has one institute, they basically take the people for their own consumption. But who would train, who would skill the workforce in private sector? Now, that is something very important. But once the only thing is then in private sector, there is more the modern knowledge that private sector has. the technology, the kind of knowledge of technologies, the latest that is happening, especially the next generation and the current generation and Gen Z and Gen X, Y, whatever, they are really much, much faster, and in terms of knowledge, they are much farther than people in the government. And that is the reason also, when you talked about PPP mode, it is not just in infrastructure which is happening. The ministries today in government of India, even the state governments, they are taking some people from the private sector who are specialists.
So, when you talked about organizations, where do you see organizations like IPE Global contributing to, because we've been in the tourism space for quite a long time. And as really an organization that is also contributing to promoting responsible and sustainable development.
So, I'm really very impressed and very pleased to know. In fact, I read some of the works that you will are doing already. And as you have mentioned, in sustainability, in inclusive tourism, in responsible tourism area, to how livelihoods within tourism can be augmented, and through sustainable model and all, you are really doing a great job. In fact, the very fact that you have started this series, and particularly you started with tourism, that itself, I think, speaks volumes about your efforts and the kind of job or the good work that IP Global is doing and plans to do in future. So I congratulate Shilpi to you and to the IP Global company for having taken this initiative. This is going to prove further that you really mean what you have planned to do.
Thank you so much. And, as we come to the last leg of our conversation, any message you did mention about, of course, I'm also struggling with these, Gen Z and Gen Alpha. So any message for the youth of today and the next generation as key champions of sustainability, inclusiveness, peacekeeping, all tenets of tourism? Any word of advice for them?
So let me start with, for the youth, I think, first of all, they need to be good human beings. And only when you are a good human being that you would think of, good for the others. That is my first point. And in order to be a good human being and to be happy in your life, I would like to suggest to the youth of this country that firstly, there's an old proverb, nothing succeeds like success. That is one. And for success, there is no shortcut to success. So a happy person will be more responsible, and he will tend to have sustainability model in all the things that he takes in his hands.
I think that's a beautiful thought, Mrs. Zutshi. I think this will go a long way, I think. Thank you so much, Mrs. Zutshi, for sharing your insights with us. And this has been a deeply enriching conversation.
Thank you, Shilpi. It has been my pleasure to be here and conversing with you. I really enjoyed. Thank you so much.
Likewise. According to the Global Peace Index 24, the economic impact of violence globally in 23 was nearly 13.5% of global GDP. World Tourism Day today aims to explore the intersection of tourism and peace building, highlighting how travel, cultural exchange, and sustainable tourism practices can promote world peace and contribute directly or indirectly to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Leaving you with that thought, that's a wrap on Changemakers Unplugged. Subscribe to this podcast feed for future interviews, and for more information on IPE Global, visit ipeglobal.com or follow us on our LinkedIn page @IPE Global.